You're listening to the 95 Podcast from the team at 95 Network, where we host conversations specifically designed to support leaders in small and mid-sized churches.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 95 Podcast. This is Dale Sellers, Executive Director at 95 Network, and I'm today hanging out with a dear friend, and it's really kind of cool how we became dear friends because I'm not really sure how we became dear friends. He used to live in my town, but I didn't know him. And Jimmy, how do we actually meet? Do you remember who connected us?
Yeah, it was after that crime you committed, and they asked me to become your parole officer, and you've checked in with me every 2 weeks ever since then, and
I didn't
it's
want
been
you to
going
tell
pretty
that
well.
part.
I can't remember how we met, but I used to live in Greenville,
Yeah.
pastored there for 5 years. I think that we were at a conference or something, and you mentioned Greenville, and I said, I used to live there, and you said, I live there now, and all of a sudden we had a connection, and
Yeah, somebody connected us, but who knows? I mean, we're both old, so it's kind of hard to remember things like that. Anyway, I have with me Jimmy Dodd. Jimmy Dodd is among many things helps to lead a ministry called Pastor Serve, and has his finger on the pulse of the nation. That sound good? Do you like that? That's pretty powerful.
that might be the overstatement of the day, but keep going.
And so anyway, today, part of having Jimmy on, I just want to kind of get his take on what he's experiencing, what he's seeing as he's working with churches and pastors across the country. But before we do that, Jimmy, you've been on the podcast before. It's been a while. Take a few moments and give us all your story, your background, and that way those who do not know Jimmy would get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, man. Gosh, I'm honored. I've been with Pastor Serve now for just about 25 years, which is just crazy to me.
Wow.
I pastored for about 17 years, pastored in Chicago and then Boston and then Greenville, South Carolina.
Yes.
Although it's very much a happening town now. Greenville's incredible. It was not a happening town when I was there.
No, it
The
wasn't.
downtown was dead, and the downtown now might be one of the best downtowns in America. I mean, really, if you've not been to Greenville, you should go because the downtown is stunning. It was not stunning when I lived there.
That's a long time
If you
ago.
were caught downtown at night, it's because you took a wrong turn and something happened. So anyway, I digress. That's another story for another time. That's for the Greenville podcast that you do on that other station. But
Yes.
anyway, and then I came to Kansas City to plant a church in 1992 with my lovely wife, Sally. And at that point, we had 2 kids, and we launched a church. And long story, God was very gracious and kind. The church grew. When when a church grows, you're asked to do things, and I was asked to do some things, and I was miserable, absolutely miserable, because my self-worth was very much in the church.
Uh-huh.
Made a lot of bad decisions to put the church before my family. Made a lot of bad decisions to be gone way too many nights just because I've got to be at the elder meeting. I've got to be at this small group, and I've got to be at this presbytery and this. And it was just far, far too much. I think I was a mean pastor. I think I was just.
What does that mean?
Well, you know what? I mean, the guy had gone to, Wheaton and Gordon Conwell and done some doctoral work. And I think I just thought I was smarter than everybody. Just thought that, if you don't believe the way I believe, you must not be very smart. I mean, I was just a mean-spirited person. There's words, but this is a Christian podcast, so I won't
before you keep moving, tell me how a guy who's mean grows a church. How does it grow?
Well, I think there's a lot of,
that's why I asked you.
let's just say really arrogant, really arrogant, with the view that my tribe was the best tribe. My view in my mind was probably the only right and correct tribe. And I think that makes you mean. I think that when so I was nice to everybody in my church because they came to my church. But if you disagreed with my theology or my stance on different things, I think I was a mean-spirited person just because I thought I was right. I thought I was right, and I could go through a long list of those things. It's the way that I describe it is I think that there's things, that we hold in our hand that we say, man, I will die for these things. I will
Mhm.
die for my doctrine. I will die for saved by grace through faith. Jesus Christ is the only way. The Bible is God's inerrant word. That there's a Trinity, that Jesus, that he was crucified, that he was resurrected. I mean, I will die on that hill. I will die
Yes,
on that hill. And then
as
over
we should.
here, yeah, that's right. And then over here we have an open hand, and in the open hand, I've got 100 issues. I've got baptism and the role of women in the church and spiritual gifts and the translation of the Bible, and I could go on and on and on.
Hmm.
And I think that we get into big problems when we take things that should be in the open hand and we put them in the closed hand.
Yeah.
And I probably had 4 to 5 things that should have been in the open hand because they're really smart people on both sides of the issues,
Mhm.
and I had them in the closed hand. And I think that that's what created a lot of issues with me, because I was fighting fights that I should have never fought. That we have a little chart that we use all the time at Pastor Serve, and we've got these 5 concentric circles, and they're die, defend, debate, discuss, dismiss.
I like
And
that.
there's a lot of things that we should be very, very willing to say, yeah, I mean, like, I'll be happy to just discuss that with you. I really don't like to debate things that would be very, very secondary. It's like, man, I'll talk about it with you, but I've lost all passion to like debate those kind of things. I know that there's, those out there, but I had things that should have been in the discuss column in the die for column.
Mm.
And it was just, they were just in the wrong place. They were in the wrong circle, and that's what created arrogance, and that's what created a mean person, I
Were
think.
you this way when you started the church? When you planted the church, would your personality that way already?
Yeah, I think I was in, it sounds like it sounds like it's an oxymoron. I think I was a nice guy, I think, in a lot of ways, but I think that there was just this intellectual pride that I still see out there in a lot of pastors. I
Oh,
think there's still a
it's
lot of
crazy.
intellectual
It's
pride, and I think that it was really my downfall for just a whole lot of years, because there were those that I should have partnered with, and it's like, I'm not going to have anything to do with that group or this group or whatever it might be. And
wow.
so that's just the way I was. And I think the God issues wake up calls in a lot of different ways. My wake up call came from a conversation my son Mark, who was at that point about 10 years old, had with my father-in-law one day on the golf course. And they came back after of just a big day of golf, and my my dear father-in-law, who always was like, I don't want to get in your business, and I don't want to tell you how to pastor, but that day he said, hey, I really think that we should have a conversation. And I said, sure. And he said, I had to talk with Mark on the golf course, and he said something that just really concerned me. I think you ought to know. I said, okay. I'm thinking, did he tell him he's on drugs, or
Yeah, yeah.
I have no idea. And he said, you know what? I asked Mark, I said, hey, Mark, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, Jimmy, he thought for a long time. And after a long time, he said, Grandpa, I have no idea what I want to be when I grow up, but I know what I don't want to be. I don't want to be a pastor because I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to
Dang.
be gone all the time. I don't want to be away from home. I want to have more time with my kids, when I grow up. And I mean, that was a knife in my heart. I mean, that was really a wake-up call. Now, by God's grace, my son Mark is a pastor. He's a wonderful, amazing pastor. But that was a real wake-up call. And you know what? It wasn't overnight, but I reached out to 5 friends and said, you know what? I need help. I need help because I'm walking down a bad road and I don't know how to do it. I really don't know how to fix this. And my life looks really good on the front stage. I'm in a
Hmm.
fast growing church. And if you came to our church, you'd say, wow, everything seems to be going, very well. So it looks good on the front stage. It's not good on the backstage, because on the backstage is overwork. There's greed, there's jealousy, there's envy. There's huge amounts of pride, huge amounts of arrogance. And man, I desperately need help. And these 5 men spoke massive amounts of truth into my life. The main two, there's a guy's name is Jack Miller, who passed away about 15, 20 years ago now. And he was a massive help in my life. And then the other guy was actually Tim Keller, who nobody had heard of him, back
Back
then,
in the
but he
day.
was a
Hmm.
but he was a he was a pastor in my tribe, and I had a lot of respect for him. So I just reached out to him, and he helped me massively. Tim passed away just about a year ago now.
Hmm.
But those guys really helped me understand the gospel in a fresh way. And again, it wasn't overnight. It
Sure.
was probably about two very long, painful years of just growing. It took God some time just to kind of pry open my hand and say, this is in the wrong hand. This is in the wrong hand. I had to go back to some very dear friends and just apologize and say, man, I've just been terrible towards you. I've been arrogant towards you. I'm so sorry. And really, God softened me and made me a much nicer person. It just, but I mean, again, it wasn't overnight.
Sure. What about your marriage? What
No.
was your marriage like during that?
Oh, it was, I mean, like it was much, much better. Because I was home, because I
No, I
understood.
mean
And
before,
what's that?
during before the change. What was your marriage
Yeah.
like?
Yeah. I mean, like it wasn't good. Well, I mean, yeah, it's, it was good in some ways, but I made choices often that should have been my wife and my family,
Hmm.
but I chose the church. And there were consequences for that. I mean, there were some things that, that my wife, that there's some hard things in her life, and I was not there for her. And I massively regret that. If I could go back in life and change things, oh man, I would be there a lot more for my family in those years. And those are years that I look back on with tears and massive regret,
Mm.
because I wasn't the best spouse that I could be. But there was a time of transformation, and a lot of things changed in my life. The thing that I had not planned on at all, no thought towards this or no plan. But I had a guy that joined my church at the very start, and he was a guy, he has a big agenda for me in my life, which I was always like, man, you think way too much of this. But anyway, he was determined to put me on the radio. This is back before
Okay.
podcasts were invented. There was no such thing as podcasts.
Oh,
We had just gone from the 8 track to the cassette. But anyway, this
ooh,
is a long time ago. But
that
anyway,
very long.
he put me on the radio. And so I had a show, which I think that my mom, and I don't know who else listened to it. But anyway, it was called Transforming Life with Pastor Jimmy Dodd. I think back now, it's honestly embarrassing. I found all of my cassette tapes about a year and a half ago. I threw them all away. I'm like, oh man,
Get
this
rid of
is a
the
part of my
evidence. No,
history.
no evidence. It's all
This
gone.
is a part of my history that I need to let go of right now. But amazingly, God used it. God used it because I began to get phone calls from pastors in about 1997, and especially 1998. And they said, hey, man, I've listened to your show. Something's different. Something's changed. You talk a lot more about the gospel. You talk more, just a lot more about your own brokenness. Talk a lot more about your own junk in your life, your own sin in your life. You seem like a safe person that I could get together with and just process with. Could we meet? And I said, yeah, I think we can get together. I don't think I have a lot to offer, but I think I could just listen. I mean, if you need somebody to just process with you, I can just listen. So I begin to meet with pastors at about the very end of 1997. Then it really ramped up in 98 and 99. And the thing that was amazing to me, Dale, was I would have all of these different conversations with pastors, because I think that they went back and told their friends, hey, I met with this guy. He was halfway competent. He was really safe. I think he's confidential. So if you want to have a place to go, I think he's a good guy. So I just began to have pastors that reached out to me. And the thing that amazed me was I hear just all of these different stories, but it's really the same story every time. It's
Hmm.
always, I have an issue. I've got this issue in my life, in my marriage, in my church. It's an addiction. It's a conflict. I mean, just a long list. There's a place where I'm supposed to go. If I have an issue, I'm supposed to go to my elders or my deacons, or my bishop or my district superintendent or whoever it might be.
Hmm.
But I would never go there
Nope,
because I think if I went there and was honest with them, I think they'd fire me.
they would.
If I was really genuinely, completely honest with those over me, I think that they'd fire me. And vocationally, I don't have a plan B. I
Hmm.
mean, I do not have a backup plan. So I can't lose my job. I cannot lose my job. If I lost my job, I mean, it would just be the end of everything. So because I can't lose my job, there's no place where I can go to really safely process the challenges that I'm going through in a gospel environment with a person that just has empathy and has background and understands this. I heard that story over and over and over until August the 15th, 1999. I'm in downtown Chicago with my family. I can tell you exactly where I was standing. And as clear as God has ever spoken to me, not out loud, but massively impressed upon my heart and said, when you were 12 years old, I called you to pastor a local church. I'm changing your call. I want you to pastor pastors. And didn't know what that meant, but went home that day, resigned the church,
That day.
and my wife and I started Pastor Serve. Now, a lot of people say when they hear that story, they say, "Wow, what an amazing step of faith." And I just laugh because I say there's a very fine line between a step of faith and complete stupidity. And
Yes.
I mean naive stupidity. So don't give me credit for step of faith. It could not have been more naive because we did not have we did not have any backup finances. We did not have a board. We did not have staff. We did not have any money. We did not have any plan. It was just we knew that God called us, and we just did it. And and God amazingly, graciously, over the years, brought people to be on a board and people to give, and a lot of staff have joined now, and it's been an amazing ride. But I'm telling you, this has gone far, far beyond what I would have ever dreamed of. We have staff spread all over the nation now. We have an amazing team. I have complete holistic trust in my team. So we're involved in so many different things that I am not involved with at all. I was on sabbatical last year, and I think the ministry probably went better when I was gone. I mean, it just went great because we have a great team. We have a phenomenal podcast. I think probably next year's is probably the best in the entire world. Uh,
Wouldn't go there.
but but uh, but yeah, I mean, I feel very, very honored to be where I am and get to do the things I get to do.
Well, you hit a nerve that I have said, I've been doing this for 40 years as far as ministry goes, and it's always like, so where does a pastor go? Where does a pastor turn when
Yep.
when they need to turn to someone? And the fact is, up until the last 15 years, there's been very few places to turn. And that's why what you stepped out and did, you might have been one of the very few people who did what you did back in the day. Things have
Yeah,
shifted
back
somewhat.
back at the very start. I think it
Yep.
was HB London
Yep.
and actually myself, and I leaned a lot on HB. He became a very close friend, and I would call him and say, "Hey, I'm in the midst of this situation with this church, and I do not know what to do. HB, help me here." He was a tremendous friend that was just very open and was not. He was just great to me. He was just a dear friend.
There's nothing more rewarding than reaching out and or being available to help a pastor who's hurting and help them to go the right direction, help them to get honest, if you will. It's an
Yep.
amazing thing to me to think about how many pastors are not honest and they lead churches. And what we say at 95 Network is, if you're an unhealthy leader, you're going to create an unhealthy organization. And
Yep.
we see a lot of that. I tell you what I want to do. I want to take a short break, and then we'll come right back from the break. And I want to ask you, in this same vein of kind of what you're seeing now on this side of COVID. So let's take a short break, and we'll be right back. Back here with Jimmy Dodd, having the time of our lives as we just talk about real life and real ministry. Jimmy, we were saying before the break that uh, there was not places to turn. There were not that many. There were just not things around for pastors back in the day to reach out and get help. Things have changed now. since this,
Mhm.
especially this side of COVID, this side of the pandemic, I know the things we do at 95 Network. I meet multiple ministries that do what you do, or counseling organizations that are available. But Jimmy, here's what I'm seeing. And one of the reasons I want to have you on today to see what you're seeing. I still see a lot of pastors resistant to reach out and get help. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that one of the big issues that we still have is I think that there are a lot of pastors that are still very isolated.
Mhm.
And I think that, I always say Satan has a very small toolbox, really small toolbox. He
Yep.
doesn't have a lot at his disposal.
Yep.
He's not omnipresent, he's not omniscient, he's not omnipotent, he can't do a lot of things. The primary tool that Satan has is he whispers lies into our ear, and so often we believe those lies.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe his number one lie is don't be honest with anybody, because if they really knew you, they wouldn't like you.
Yep. Yep.
If they really knew you, they'll reject you and you'll be embarrassed and you'll feel shame. So don't reach out to anybody. And so I think that there are still pastors that have heard that lie and have convinced themselves, gosh, the stuff I deal with is just so embarrassing. It's so shameful. I feel so guilty. I could never tell anybody what I'm going through. And I want to stay isolated, even though I might be surrounded by people, surrounded by, I mean, like a lot of times a big church,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not going to tell anybody. That's still a massive problem.
I think that the word isolation, at least as far as this year has gone for me with 2024, that has been the word used the most.
Hmm.
Wherever I've been, as we record this, I just wrapped up doing 2 conferences in Indiana, and I would say that probably a dozen different people talk to me about the pain they're experiencing and about the impact of being isolated. I think it's
Hmm.
Proverbs 18:1 that says, "A man who isolates himself seeks his own desire."
Yeah.
And so you don't think about that. You think, well, I'm isolated to kind of cover up, but really you are seeking to kind of keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Is it
That's exactly right.
when you think about isolation and what do you, if you have a pastor who will reach out to you, how do you kind of guide him into understanding the value of being connected to others?
Yeah, I think that we've been created to have community. I think that that's how we've been made by God, and it's in every aspect of our life. It's like I watch a great show on TV, and the way that I can really enjoy it is I say, Dale, I just watched this
Mhm.
show. You've got to watch it. Why? Because we're created to, you know what I want to share. If I hear a great song,
Mhm.
oh man, Dale, I heard the best song today. I really encourage you to listen to it. It's just that's just the way that God has created us, is for connection. And when we start to actually deny that and pull back and say I'm just going to be on my own and I'm not going to be honest with anybody, that's when more and more shame builds up and more guilt builds up, because to be open and honest is to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
is to be really open and vulnerable, which in the scriptures, I mean, at the very start in Genesis, that meant that they were naked. It said they were naked and they felt no shame, which means they were, I mean, completely open with everything,
Mhm.
and they felt no shame. Now we do everything because of sin. We do everything to cover and hide and pose and pretend. And when we do those things, we feel more and more guilt and more shame. Now, one thing that fuels this oftentimes is, and this is the thing that we beat this drum every day at Pastor Serve. And if you read any of my books or anything with me, you're going to hear it over and over again. We make backstage, there are all these things. I mean, like in my backstage, but we make all of these assumptions about my backstage based upon my front stage.
Mm.
And so I see a pastor, and man, I stop off at his church and hear him preach or hear her preach, and I think, wow, they're really strong. And I go and just kind of walk around the church, and children's ministry is running well, and youth ministry, and I see they have a huge, men's ministry and women's ministry, and man, this person is so engaging up in front, and I think, wow, this person is really incredible. They're amazing. Okay, what do I know about that person? Nothing. I don't
Nothing.
know how they treat their spouse.
Nothing
I
at
don't know
all.
how they handle money. I don't know if they're generous. I don't know if they kick their dog. I don't know anything about them. but I made all these assumptions about their backstage based upon their front stage. And I'm telling you, it fuels isolation when we say so many things about pastors. Oh my goodness, you're incredible. You're amazing. I heard you teach. Wow. What a gifted person you are. We don't know anything about their life.
Mm-hmm.
And that just, it's like, hey, you know what? I've got everybody fooled. I mean, everybody thinks I'm this amazing person, but I can just keep going, even though they might not be connected to anybody and their backstage might be a complete mess. So we have to stop this thing about assumptions, just assuming, because listen, like you, I mean, we have worked with a lot of pastors that lead some very successful churches and their lives are a complete mess. So don't just assume because the church is big and thriving and everything else that you think, wow, it must be all really, really good in the life of the pastoral staff. No, they might be very isolated. They might be hiding, posing, pretending because they have that huge fear. You're going to find me out. And they've convinced themselves because of Satan's lies. If you find me out, you will reject me. And man, no.
Isn't the front stage pastor, if we're honest, isn't that what most American church members are looking for?
Oh, of course. Of course. I mean, we shop based, we shop. Yeah. You know what? I was at a church last night with a wonderful pastoral staff. Wonderful pastoral staff. But I can promise you, because of how they operate and they're so open and they're so completely vulnerable and all of these other things, the church is never, I mean, it will never be a mega church. There's no way. No way. It's just their makeup and the way that they lead. They're so open and so vulnerable. Their church is going to get, it might one day reach 1,000. And I was with a bunch of folks last night and I said, like, that the style of these pastors, it's not going to be a big church. And everybody there said, we know that and we're okay with that because we believe our pastors are real and genuine and completely open. They talk about their own sin. They talk about their own mess. They're trying to actually impress the Holy Spirit and the Lord Jesus Christ because they understand that He is actually the audience. It's not the people in the church. And man, these are just good pastors.
How did that
But
church specifically get to that point? Is it did they have some kind of experience that happened that turned them around? Is it the lead pastor guiding it, or have they always been this way? I'm interested to know that.
yeah, gosh, that's a great question. The two really key pastors on staff have both been through really deep suffering, really
Mm,
deep suffering. And one guy lost his wife, and one guy went through a painful situation in another very large, well-known church, and he just went through deep pain there. But they've both been through a great deal of suffering,
mm,
and yet they emerged through it with a fresh understanding of the gospel. And because they talk so openly about their own suffering, about their own loss, about their own grief, about their own mistakes, people feel for it's amazing that when we talk in a way as pastors about our own sin and we're open about it,
hmm
it's incredible how that gives people a freedom to talk about their own junk in their own life. If we can just get past the man, I can't be open about any of these things. If we can just understand, and when we're open, and it's no fun to stand up and confess all of our sins, and I don't mean all, but as we just say, man, I'm really struggling in this
hmm
situation, and I
hmm
know I should love this person. I don't feel love towards this person, or the guy. Let's see, I preached last week or the week before, and you spoke about idols in our life, and I said, if you make a C on a test, if you're upset, okay, that's understandable. But if you're devastated, I mean, if you just feel devastated, that means that to make an A has actually become, I mean, very, very much an idol in your life. It's your self worth. It's
Yep.
like, okay, I find who I am in my grades. And I said, um, if I'm mad about a Chiefs loss or a Jayhawk loss in basketball, if I'm upset, okay, But if I'm devastated, and I mean, it really, really impacts my day, and it's like I'm in a bad mood the rest of the day, then that means that those things have become an idol in my life. And I said, listen, I confess to you, there are times in which crazy things that really don't mean anything in the
Mm-hmm.
long run,
Mm-hmm.
like the Chiefs and Jayhawk basketball, uh, it has way too much control over my life. Um, yeah, which is actually a phenomenal exercise. It's a phenomenal exercise to write down just all of just like everything I care about. I can just
Okay.
list everything I care about my wife and my kids and my grandkids, and I care about Pastor Serve and the Pastor Serve staff and people that we work with, and I care about my dog, and I care about my neighbors, and I could just go on and on, all friends. And then I care about, I care lots and lots about Haiti. I care
Mm-hmm.
about the Chiefs. I care about the Royals and the Jayhawks. And then just to list, okay, how much influence do I have over all of those things?
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, how much control do I have over all of those things? And I'm telling you, it puts you on your knees when it's like, okay, I care a lot about Haiti. I care a lot about the pastors in Haiti.
Yeah,
I don't have any control over that situation.
not at all.
I don't have any control over it. So that just brings me to prayer all the more. I care a great deal about my kids that are much older and now have I mean, like their own lives.
Yep.
And I think I still have some influence in their life, but I mean, very, very, very little control. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, Lord, I can't control that, but I've got to go to you in prayer. And so, boy, those things just bring me onto my knees. And when I realize, okay, I care a lot, I don't have any control. I don't
That
have
was
any influence. And like
that's
in like sports,
yeah.
I don't have any control or any influence. And
Mm-mm.
it doesn't mean anything eternally.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
Even though it's fun to cheer for a football team that's won the Super Bowl 3 times in the last 5 years, but it doesn't mean anything in terms of eternity. So,
You, that battle for control is the thing that I, at this part of my life, as I record this, I'm almost 62. I'll turn 62 in a couple of weeks, and it's only been within the last 5 to 8 years that I finally just said, "Okay, God, I don't like it, but I'm not in control." And then I finally get
right.
to the place where I'm going, okay, I'm good now. I trust you with it. That's that battle for control that, and you see, you mentioned your kids that you see parents that, they manipulate and control their kids even after they're married and on, and it makes no sense whatsoever for people to live that way. As we
Yeah.
move kind of
Yeah.
closer toward the end of the podcast, and you're working with churches and pastors all across the country, I want to ask you a couple of questions. The first one I
Yeah.
ask you is what do you see right now that gives you a lot of encouragement, hope? What are you excited about over the next 10 years?
Yeah. It's interesting, but there are certain words that at certain times are very, very popular. Like 50, 60 years ago, if you say, hey, I'm a fundamentalist, that's a good thing.
Yep.
60 years ago. Now, you don't want to be identified as a fundamentalist. If you say, you know what, I'm an evangelical,
Hmm.
that word has really been skewed in the past, probably 10 or so years.
Yeah.
I think a word right now that's a very positive word that everybody likes is the word, I want to flourish.
Mm.
I think flourishing is a very, very popular word. And I think that more and more pastors are seeing that soul care is an important part of flourishing. And I get very encouraged when I speak with the church staff and they say, hey, we have this budget, and every year we have these funds to go to a big conference. And we go, and I could name
Hmm.
you 15 conferences around the country that I mean, like a lot of pastors go to. But this year we really felt like, you know what, rather than spend the money on a conference, let's bring in somebody from the outside and let's have a soul care retreat. And let's have that person walk us through some very practical ways to care for our own souls so that we could be more and more of a flourishing human being.
Yep.
I'm encouraged by that. I'm
That's good.
encouraged when people want to do soul care so that they can just, I mean, just flourish. So that's a great trend that we love. And just that phrase soul care
Mhm.
has been more and more popularized, I think, in the past 5 or 6 years, which just makes us laugh because we've done soul care a pastor search for 25 years, and we've called it Soul Care, but all of a sudden everybody's on board,
You
which
were
is great, which
you
is
were
great.
ahead of the curve is all. We're doing our new conferences
For once in my life,
ahead of the curve.
I was just,
Our
yeah,
new
a
our
little.
new our new conference is called Soul Care Essentials, and that's what we're doing right now. And everything about it is there's three sessions. One's your private life, one's your personal life, and one's your professional life. And it's all practical things. It's what's going on inside your head, what's going on inside your relationships. Where are you at vocationally moving forward?
I
And we
love it.
talk about being bivocational and the value that can come from that. And so, yeah, we've been focusing on it as well. In fact, we had to stop 2 years ago and go, okay, we can keep offering what we already offer, and we still have those things. But we would hear pastor after pastor say, listen, I don't want to come to a conference and learn about mission and vision. Right now, I'm just trying to get through the day. And
We
and I
heard the
will
same
say
thing,
this, and I
brother.
will say
Yep.
this to you. Why I wanted to get with you today was just to see if this was your vibe too. We're just still seeing a lot of folks who won't even put the effort to come to a half day conference. They won't
Yep.
even, we're just so busy. And I'm like, doing what? I mean, it's just a half a day of your life. But because soul care is still not as valued as it needs to be. Is that what you're seeing?
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yes. And I mean, it's interesting because we have, we have lots of conferences we do that are very different, I think, from lots of other conferences, because we talked with lots of folks afterwards who say, okay, this was a different conference, because it felt more like a soul care conference. It's like that's exactly what like it was meant to be. It was meant just to really care for you and your heart. And so I think that that's very, very appreciated by people.
That's good,
And so I
man.
think that I mean, I think that that's a good trend. And I hope there are, we're in it. And I mean, I hope that there are less big conferences, because I don't know if those do a massive amount.
Well, honestly,
Um,
if we're just going to be honest, what happens typically is you go to a big conference, you pay the money, you go on the trip, you take a lot of notes, you buy the materials, you use the church credit card so you can buy all this stuff, and you never look at it again. One of the things that we've created with our Soul Care conference is we've created a 6 week follow up where
yeah,
which with the group that met together can go through and virtually they can do it through Zoom, but we just went deeper into the topics, but so that it gets traction. I think one of the things about larger, and I'm not anti-large conference, but it's just a lot of times it doesn't you gain no traction. Yes, it was
right,
good to have the break. Yes, it was good to have a reprieve from the flow of life. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really add that much value to you. Whereas
right.
with soul care, if we'll embrace it, there can be life change is what can really happen.
Agreed deal. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Yep,
All right,
I'm
so you
there.
look forward now, you look forward at 10 years, the next 10 years. What do you see that scares you as far as the church goes?
Yeah, what scares me is I think that there's a lot of pastors that are fearful about the election this year. I think there's a lot of pastors that feel like, I want to have a very, very divided church, and I really don't know the best way to actually address this. I'm not sure exactly what to say. I'm not exactly sure what to do. And so I think that there's a lot of fear, that this will be a very divisive time for our country. And I think that there are those that want to speak up, but they fear speaking up. Um, I think that there's also those who have divided things in a way, um, that, and gosh, it's a hard conversation. I think there are those that have divided things, um, out of the gospel, and they feel content with what they believe. Now, nowadays I think that there are probably five really big issues out there that we talk about a lot as a church. We talk about marriage, we talk about gender, we talk about abortion, we talk about issues of justice, and then we talk about the poor.
Mhm.
I think that all five are extremely important. But I don't like the fact that we have created a Christian culture in which, as long as you hold the three of the five, you're good.
Mhm.
And I have met with a lot of pastors that just are passionate about three of those, and they pretty much ignore two. And it's like, Jesus spoke a lot about, and so I mean, the three that most hold to, that I cross almost every day, they're like, man, we have to fight for abortion and for gender and then for marriage. Okay. I think we've lost a lot of those battles. And I think we have to, at some point, just know that, yeah, I think we still have to stand for truth.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as laws being changed, I think that we have lost those battles. But when you're a church that does everything you can in those three areas, but you do nothing as far as issues of justice or care for the poor, then I think you're very, very much out of balance.
Mm.
And it scares me when I see some churches that have gone kind of just very, very much on one side, and they have ignored the other. So I think it's like, you know what? Let's stand for all five,
Mm.
because I think that all five are just extremely important. Um, but I've had some tough conversations with pastors, really tough conversations that,
Is it just the pastors, or is it their congregations that
oh, it's both.
that drive
Sure.
this? You know,
Oh,
so
sure.
here,
It's both.
so you're talking to a pastor, and he actually or she wants to engage in the conversation that you're talking about, but they have a congregation that doesn't want to do that. What advice would you give that leader?
Yeah. Um, is I think you have to be true to your own calling. I think you have to be true to your own soul and the way that God leads, and just know that there's going to be. I mean, like if you speak truth, there will be consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Man, what an example in the past week. A guy that I love, who is a amazing, wonderful individual, is Harrison Butker,
Mm-hmm.
who kicks for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's been vilified
He
this
has
past
been.
week. He's been vilified in the press because of a graduation that he gave. He's a wonderful Catholic brother. He gave a graduation speech to a small Catholic university that's gone viral. And it's like, you know what? We need more Harrison Butkers. And I think that you just have to know, if you speak up and if you speak the truth, you will be vilified. You will be, I mean, you will, man, it's going to be hard. But but Jesus said it would be hard, right? He said, "Hey, listen, if you follow me, it's going to be hard. There's going to be some hard conversations. There's going to be some very difficult things. They might even begin to persecute you." And so here's a guy, then he goes through all of these things because he just speaks, and you have to have the whole speech in context. It
Yes.
was a wonderful message. It's like, oh my goodness. And the fact that that we hate on him, that breaks my heart. Because we need more Harrison Butkers in this world that have the courage, especially as a man, just to stand up and to speak up. And man, he's a strong individual who loves his wife. I mean, and he protects women. He wants the best for women. Um, yeah, it's crazy.
He just got
I could
crucified.
go on and on.
But the owner of the team and her daughters come out and defended him.
Right, right, which is
So
great. Which is
yeah.
great. And some teammates defended him, which I love. Yeah.
Well, the reality is this, if you're worried about offending people, then, sell ice cream, because you're not, and even there, you might have the wrong flavor. But if you're going to
Hey,
make a
yeah, I
difference,
don't like your rocky road, buddy. What's up with it, man? People
if you
hate on you
if you're
for all
gonna
sorts of
make a
reasons.
difference, it's
Oh
just kind
yeah.
of where we are. And I
Yeah.
guess I feel like, and you tell me if you think this is too extreme, but it just feels like we're almost at a crossroads in American culture with the church, as far as, is the church going to rise up and impact the culture, or is it going to take the easy way out? Are you seeing that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, yes, I get very, very encouraged when I meet with pastors um who understand I will preach the truth and let the chips fall wherever they may, because this is in the hands of the Lord. Um and man, it you know what, it takes courage. It takes godly courage to preach the gospel, to preach what's in the gospel. Um because ultimately it is for people. It
Hmm.
protects people, it guards people, it helps them to flourish.
Yeah.
Um, but there can be some pushback and some hate. And I think that we have to understand that's part of the deal. It's unfortunate, but that's part of the deal that we live in right now. We live in a very, very divided culture. And boy, there's times I wish we could just have some perspective and say, We have no idea how blessed we are. We have, it's like I'd like to take a whole lot of people and just transport them for a day to Gaza or a day in the Ukraine or a day, like in Haiti.
Mhm.
And you're going to see how blessed we are and how much we have.
As we wrap up, you're sitting with a pastor having coffee, and they're discouraged, and they're not sure if they got what it takes to lead in the time that we're in. What would you tell them?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would tell them the most basic message in the world. I would tell them, hey, listen, Jesus loves you. God has promised you that he loves you. He cares for you. He is for you, that he will never leave you. And you have to understand that before you do anything today, like when you wake up in the morning before your feet hit the floor, God is proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
What you do today is not going to make God proud of you. God is already proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
I say, think about the way that you treat like your own children. And so you're on the way with your son who's 12 years old. You're on the way to a baseball game, and he says, Dad, if I hit a home run, will you be proud of me? And almost every dad says exactly the same thing. It'd be really cool if you hit a home run, but I'm proud of you now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to be proud if you hit a home run. I'm proud of you now. It'll be really cool if that happens, but that's not going to be the thing that dictates if I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we think, wait a second, are we a better parent to our children than we think that God is to us? Because God looks at us with much more affection and says, hey, listen, I know you're going to mess up. I know you're going to blow it often, but I love you. I'm for you. I'm proud of you now. And I would say, man, you know what? Make sure that you're pastoring in response to God's kindness and grace, not trying to earn God's kindness or grace, but in response to God's kindness and grace, because God is for you. He loves you. He's with you.
I wish we'd
That's
had that
about as
conversation
basic as it
20
can
years
be.
ago.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
I
Yeah.
wish
Oh,
we'd
listen, me too. Yeah.
20 years ago. I probably wouldn't have wrote stalled. Thank you so much, man. Thanks for being my friend. Thank you for your care for pastors. Thank you for supporting and believing in 95 Network. We're all in this together, and I'm excited about what's coming. I know we got some difficult days ahead, but I think we got some great days ahead too. And man, if we can serve you guys any way at Pastor Serve, we appreciate what you're doing. But thank you again for joining me today. It means so much
I
to me.
love to hang out with you. I love to hang out with you. You're a great friend. This is a great show. And you said, if there's anything I can do, yeah, the next time I pass through Greenville, can I meet you downtown and you'll buy lunch?
You can count on it. If you'll come at
Hey,
night,
you made that commitment right here on the air.
if
I
you'll
just
come
want to
in,
make sure we had a record of that.
if you come at night, I'll take you to the Powder Steakhouse.
Oh, baby. I might
Oh,
fly in
yeah.
the night early just for that.
Thank you, buddy. I
Love you,
appreciate
man.
it. See you, man. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the 95 Podcast. We look forward to sharing another episode with you next week. In the meantime, visit our website at 95network.org. The website is loaded with great resources created for small and mid-sized church leaders. Until next time, have a great week.